6 months after the battle that shattered the Dominion fleet, the galaxy was a very different place. The rigid order that had suppressed freedom for 10,000 years had collapsed, replaced by chaos as hundreds of species rediscovered their independence and fought to reclaim their heritage. Fleet Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, built in the ruins of what had once been Nexus Prime. The massive ring structure had been converted from a symbol of oppression into a beacon of hope, its corridors now filled with representatives from liberated worlds working together to build something unprecedented, a truly free galactic civilization. "The reports keep coming in," Admiral Lisa Harper said as she joined Morrison at the viewing window. Below them, construction crews from dozens of different species worked side by side, rebuilding the station to serve its new purpose as headquarters for the Terran Coalition. Another 12 systems have declared independence from their dominion. Overseers this week. Morrison nodded, watching a group of young aliens who had never known freedom learning to make their own decisions. It was a difficult process for many species. After generations of being told what to think and how to act, the responsibility of choice was overwhelming for some. Dr. Alan Brooks led the Cultural Recovery Program, helping liberated species rediscover their lost histories and traditions. His office was filled with artifacts, documents, and recordings that had been hidden or forgotten during the Dominion's reign. Each recovered piece of culture was like finding a lost treasure. The Altarians are beginning to remember their music. Brooks reported to the Coalition Council during their weekly meeting. For 300 years, they were only allowed to sing Dominion work songs. Yesterday, an elderly Altarian remembered a lullaby her grandmother had taught her before the kneeling ceremony. Within hours, they were composing new songs for the first time in centuries. President Helen Carter, now serving as the first elected leader of the coalition, smiled at the report. The transformation of the galaxy was happening faster than anyone had expected, driven by a hunger for freedom that had been suppressed but never eliminated. "What's the status on the former Dominion races?" Carter asked. General Marcus Stone consulted his tactical displays. "The 7 ruling races have scattered. Some, like the Krillian military factions, are still fighting a guerrilla war against the New Order. They can't accept that their empire is gone. Others have retreated to isolated systems where they're trying to rebuild their old power structures." The most surprising development had come from the Ethereal Collective. A group of younger ethereals, led by one who had chosen the human name Hope, had approached Earth with an unprecedented request. They wanted to learn how to be individuals instead of part of a collective consciousness. "It's fascinating and terrifying," Hope explained to Dr. Walsh during one of their sessions. "For millions of years, we shared all thoughts and experiences. Privacy was unknown to us. But watching humans taught us that there might be value in having our own individual perspectives. The process was difficult and sometimes painful, but slowly, members of the Ethereal Collective were learning to think for themselves. It was perhaps the most profound change in their species' entire history." Captain Paul Anderson had survived the destruction of the UES Defiance, though barely. Now he commanded the Freedom Fleet, a combined force of human and alien vessels that responded to distress calls across the galaxy. Their mission was simple but vital. No species should ever again be forced to surrender their freedom to another. "We received a distress call from the Vegan system," Anderson reported during a coalition briefing. "A group of Christek Union remnants are trying to force the local population back into servitude. They claim it's for their own good, of course." "Standard response?" Admiral Harper asked. "Standard response," Anderson confirmed. "We remind them that the age of forced submission is over, and if they don't agree, we help them understand through more direct means." The Coalition's philosophy was straightforward. Every species had the right to choose its own path, but no species had the right to choose for others. It was a principle that required constant vigilance to maintain. Dr. Nina Walsh had been appointed as the Coalition's Director of Technological Integration, helping newly freed species adapt advanced technology to their own needs, rather than being forced to use standardized Dominion equipment. Her workshops were constantly busy as beings who had forgotten how to innovate rediscovered the joy of creation. "The beauty of diversity is becoming clear," Walsh explained to a group of young engineers from various species. When every world tries to solve problems in their own way, we get hundreds of different solutions instead of just one. Some fail, but the ones that succeed often work better than anything the Dominion ever created. The First Galactic Assembly. A Free Worlds was scheduled to convene 1 year after humanity's refusal to kneel. Representatives from over 200 species were expected to attend, not as subjects or servants, but as equals working together to build a better galaxy. Preparation for the assembly revealed just how much the galaxy had changed. Species that had been enemies for centuries were now cooperating on joint projects. Former Dominion client states were sharing technology and resources freely, creating an explosion of innovation and cultural exchange that hadn't been seen since before the Dominion's rise to power. Commander Ryan Davis, now serving as the Coalition's intelligence coordinator, monitored communications across the galaxy and reported on the progress of liberation. "The rate of change is accelerating," he told the Leadership Council. "Every day more worlds are throwing off the last remnants of Dominion control. But we're also seeing some species struggling with freedom. They're asking us to tell them what to do." This was one of the Coalition's greatest challenges. Some species had been under Dominion control for so long that they had forgotten how to make independent decisions. They needed guidance, but the Coalition was determined not to become the new oppressor by making choices for others. Ambassador Claire Johnson, now serving as the Coalition's chief diplomatic officer, had developed protocols for helping these species rediscover their autonomy. "We provide information and support," she explained, "but we never tell them what decision to make. Freedom isn't something you can give to someone else. They have to claim it for themselves." The anniversary of humanity's refusal to kneel was marked by ceremonies across the galaxy. On Earth, President Carter delivered a speech that was broadcast to every liberated world, reflecting on the year that had changed everything. 1 year ago, we stood before the most powerful empire in galactic history and said no. Carter spoke to the assembled crowd in Geneva. "We didn't know if we would survive the next day, but we knew that some things are worth dying for. Freedom is one of those things." The ceremony included a moment of silence for all the species that had been lost to Dominion oppression over the millennia, followed by a celebration of the diversity and creativity that was now flowering across the galaxy. Children from dozens of different species played together in the gardens of New Geneva, their laughter echoing through corridors that had once known only the cold silence of absolute authority. Their parents worked side by side on projects that would have been impossible under Dominion rule, combining different perspectives and technologies to solve problems that had seemed insurmountable. Above them, human and alien ships patrolled, together, guardians of a freedom that had once seemed impossible. The sight of former enemies working as allies was becoming commonplace, a testament to what could be achieved when beings were allowed to choose cooperation over conquest. The galaxy was not perfect. There were still conflicts, still groups trying to establish new empires, still species struggling with the responsibility of freedom. But for the first time in 10,000 years, those conflicts were between equals, not between masters and slaves. As Fleet Admiral Morrison watched the stars from his station's observation deck, he reflected on how much had changed since that day when Admiral Vexthal had demanded humanity's submission. The galaxy was larger and more diverse than the Dominion had ever allowed anyone to know, filled with wonders and possibilities that were only now being rediscovered. A communication alert interrupted his thoughts. Another system was requesting Coalition assistance in establishing their independence. Morrison smiled and authorized the mission, knowing that somewhere in the galaxy another species was about to learn what it meant to stand tall. The day humans refused to kneel had become the day the galaxy learned to stand. And now, across countless worlds under infinite stars, free beings looked to the future with hope instead of fear, ready to explore the cosmos not as servants or masters, but as equals sharing the greatest adventure of all, the journey toward tomorrow. The Dominion fleet that assembled to crush humanity was a sight that defied imagination. Millions of ships from across the galaxy converged on the Sol system, their combined mass blocking out stars and casting shadows across planets. The fleet, stretched from Mercury's orbit to beyond Mars, a testament to 10,000 years of accumulated power and technology. Supreme Admiral Kextar of the Void Swimmers commanded the armada from his flagship, a vessel so massive it had its own gravitational field. As a being composed of dark matter and negative energy, he viewed the universe differently than most species, seeing patterns and possibilities that others missed. In all his eons of existence, he had never encountered a species foolish enough to challenge the Dominion's authority. Analysis confirms the humans have approximately 200 vessels, his aide reported, a crystalline being whose geometric form pulsed with calculated efficiency. Their technology is primitive by galactic standards, their largest ship masses, less than 1% of our smallest destroyer. Kextar's form rippled with what might have been amusement. Yet they refused to kneel. Fascinating. Perhaps their destruction will provide useful data about the psychological limits of lesser species. On Earth, Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the Luna Command Center, watching the enemy fleets approach, on displays that showed the magnitude of what they faced. Every human ship was in position, from the massive dreadnoughts constructed in the last desperate weeks to civilian freighters hastily fitted with weapons. The odds were beyond hopeless, but no one had suggested surrender. Captain Lisa Harper coordinated the defense from her position aboard the battlecruiser U.S. Vengeance, reviewing tactical data that made victory seem impossible. "Admiral, they have us outnumbered 5,000 to 1. Their smallest ships have shields stronger than our most powerful weapons." "Understood," Morrison replied calmly. "What's our status on the special preparations?" "Dr. Walsh's modifications are installed on every ship. All personnel have received the psychological warfare packages, and the archives are ready for broadcast." The archives were humanity's secret weapon, not a super weapon in the traditional sense, but something potentially more dangerous. Over the decades, Earth's intelligence services had been monitoring alien communications and gathering data about the Dominion's history. What they discovered would have shocked the galaxy if anyone had been brave enough to investigate. The battle began with the Dominion's traditional opening gambit. Supreme Admiral Kextar transmitted a final demand for surrender, while simultaneously demonstrating their power by obliterating Pluto with a single shot from their main fleet's combined weapons array. "Humans of Earth," Kextar's voice echoed, "across all frequencies witness the futility of resistance. Your outer planet no longer exists. Submit now, and your deaths will be swift." The response came from Admiral Morrison himself, broadcast across the entire system where both fleets could hear it. The message contained just 2 words, spoken with quiet determination: "Bring it." What followed shattered every expectation in the aliens had about warfare. The human fleet didn't engage in the formal, predictable combat patterns that had defined galactic conflict for millennia. Instead, they fought like cornered animals, using tactics that seemed to border on madness. Captain Gary Phillips led the first wave of human fighters in what appeared to be a suicidal charge directly at the enemy's command ships. The Dominion forces prepared to swat them aside like insects, but the humans didn't attack where expected. Instead, they targeted the enemy fleet's communication arrays and sensor networks, crippling coordination between ships. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez commanded a squadron of modified mining ships that had been converted into mobile ambush platforms. Using the asteroid belt as cover, her forces appeared and disappeared like ghosts, striking at enemy supply lines and retreat routes with hit-and-run tactics that the aliens had never encountered. Commander Dan Wilson took psychological warfare to new levels, broadcasting human music, poetry, and war cries across all communication channels. The effect on the alien crews was immediate and devastating. Species that had operated in perfect harmony for thousands of years suddenly found their concentration shattered by the chaotic beauty of human creativity. The turning point came when Dr. Nina Walsh activated the broadcasts that would change galactic history forever. From hidden transmitters throughout the solar system, the truth about the Dominion began spreading across the galaxy on every frequency that could carry information. The 7 races hadn't created galactic civilization, they had destroyed it. The archives contained records recovered from dead worlds, testimonies from extinct species, and evidence of systematic genocide that spanned millions of years. The Dominion hadn't brought peace to the stars. They had murdered anyone who refused to conform to their vision of order. Citizens of the galaxy, Dr. Walsh's voice carried across space, reaching every world under Dominion control. You were not always slaves. Your ancestors were proud, diverse, creative beings who built wonders beyond imagination. The Dominion destroyed them and told you it was for your own good. The reaction was immediate and explosive. On worlds across the galaxy, species that had served the Dominion for generations began questioning their masters for the first time in centuries. The rigid control that held galactic civilization together started to crack as suppressed memories, and forbidden histories suddenly made sense. Aboard the Dominion flagship, Supreme Admiral Kextar watched in growing alarm as his fleet began to fragment. Ships crewed by conquered species started firing on their Dominion controllers. Communication networks collapsed as different races began speaking in long-forbidden languages and following ancient customs they had been forced to abandon. Impossible, Kextar transmitted to his subordinates. How do the humans possess archived data from extinct civilizations? Those records were destroyed millennia ago. The answer came from an unexpected source. Captain Paul Anderson, commanding the UES Defiance, had survived the initial assault despite his ship taking catastrophic damage. Most of his crew was dead or wounded, but the ship's communication system still functioned. We've been watching you for longer than you think. Anderson's voice crackled across the battle zone. Every crashed ship, every abandoned probe, every piece of debris that fell into our space, we studied it all. We learned your history even when you tried to hide. The battle reached its climax as the human fleet made their final stand around Earth itself. The planet's orbital defenses, hastily constructed in the weeks before the invasion, couldn't match Dominion firepower, but they bought precious time for the rebellion spreading across the galaxy to take hold. Sergeant Tony Martinez, the soldier, who had spoken truth to power in the council chamber, now found himself manning a gun turret on Earth's primary defense station. As enemy ships approached through the debris field that had once been humanity's outer defenses, he broadcast one final message to the galaxy. This is Earth calling all free beings. We're probably going to die here, but we wanted you to know something. You don't have to live on your knees. You can stand up. You can fight back. You can choose to be free. The UES Defiance, its hull shattered, and engines failing, made one last desperate charge at the Dominion flagship. Captain Anderson, bleeding from multiple wounds but still conscious, aimed his dying ship at the command vessel that symbolized 10,000 years of oppression. "Attention all Dominion forces," Anderson transmitted as his ship accelerated toward its target. "This is humanity. We do not kneel." The collision between the Defiance and Kextar's flagship created an explosion visible from Earth's surface. Both vessels disintegrated in a burst of light that briefly outshone the sun, taking with them the Supreme Admiral and the symbol of Dominion invincibility. The death of their commander and the revelation of their historical crimes shattered the alien fleet's morale completely. Ships began surrendering or fleeing in all directions as the rigid command structure that held the Dominion together collapsed under the weight of its own contradictions. Across the galaxy, the rebellion that had started with humanity's refusal to kneel spread like wildfire. Species that had been slaves for generations remembered what freedom meant and began fighting for it with the same desperate courage that humans had shown. On Earth, Admiral Morrison watched from his damaged command center as the largest fleet in galactic history broke apart and scattered. The immediate threat to humanity was over, but the war for galactic freedom was just beginning. "Sir," Captain Harper reported, her voice filled with amazement, "we're receiving surrender offers from over 300 enemy vessels. The rest are either retreating or have joined the rebellion against their Dominion controllers." Morrison nodded slowly, feeling the weight of what they had accomplished and what lay ahead. Humanity had not only survived their confrontation with cosmic power, but had inspired something that the galaxy hadn't seen in millennia: hope. The day humans refused to kneel had become the day the galaxy learned to stand. Nexus Prime was bigger than anything humans had ever imagined. The ring-shaped station stretched across millions of kilometers, its surface covered with cities that housed countless alien species. The artificial star at its center cast light across structures that had stood for thousands of years, monuments to the power and permanence of the Galactic Dominion Council. Ambassador Claire Johnson stood at the observation deck of the UES Defiance, watching as their shuttle approached the central docking complex. Beside her, Dr. Alan Brooks reviewed his notes about the 7 races they were about to face, while General Marcus Stone checked his ceremonial sidearm one final time. "Remember," Johnson said to her team as they prepared to disembark, "we're not here to start a war. We're here to make it clear that humanity will not surrender its freedom." The docking bay was vast beyond comprehension, filled with ships from across the galaxy. Human eyes had never seen such diversity of design and technology. Some vessels looked like living creatures, others resembled geometric crystals, and still others seemed to be made of pure energy barely contained within metal frameworks. Their escort, a group of tall, graceful beings with silver skin and glowing eyes, led them through corridors that hummed with power. These were members of the Ethereal Collective, one of the 7 ruling races, and their telepathic abilities made them natural diplomats and translators. "Your mental patterns are most unusual," the lead Ethereal commented to Johnson as they walked. "Most species think in organized, linear progressions. Your thoughts jump between logic, emotion, and instinct without any apparent pattern." "Is that a problem?" Johnson asked. "It is unprecedented," the Ethereal replied, and something in its tone suggested this was deeply troubling. The council chamber was a testament to the power of the Dominion. The circular room was large enough to hold thousands of observers, with 7 throne-like structures arranged in the center, where the ruling races sat in judgment. Each throne was designed to accommodate the unique physiology of its occupant, and the beings seated upon them represented millions of years of evolution and technological advancement. The Zephyrian representative was the most intimidating, appearing as a constantly shifting form of energy and light that occasionally coalesced into something resembling a humanoid shape. When it spoke, its voice echoed with the power of stars being born and dying. The Krillian delegate looked like a nightmare fusion of insect and machine, its body encased in biomechanical armor that clinked and whirred with each movement. Its 4 arms ended in claws that could tear through metal, and its compound eyes reflected the light like faceted gems. The Stone Warden was exactly what its name suggested, a living mountain that somehow moved and thought. Its form was roughly humanoid but composed entirely of crystalline rock that sparkled with internal light. When it shifted position, the entire chamber trembled slightly. The Void Swimmer was perhaps the most unsettling, appearing as a dark tear. In space itself, an absence of light and matter that somehow maintained consciousness. Looking directly at it made human eyes water and minds struggle to process what they were seeing. The Christek Union representative existed as a complex geometric pattern that constantly reconfigured itself, a living demonstration of mathematical perfection and artificial intelligence evolved beyond biological limitations. The Biomancer shifted between different organic forms as they watched, one moment appearing as a graceful humanoid plant, the next as something resembling a predatory cat, then as a creature that had no comparison in Earth's biology. At the center of the 7 thrones stood High Arbiter Zenthal of the Zephyrians, whose energy form crackled with obvious power and authority. Around the chamber, thousands of representatives from subject species sat in silent observation, their postures uniformly submissive and fearful. Humans of the planet called Earth. Zenthal's voice resonated through the chamber like controlled thunder. "You stand before the Council of Ages, the rightful rulers of this galaxy. For 10,000 years, all species that have reached the stars have knelt before our wisdom and accepted their place in the natural order." Johnson stepped forward, her human delegation arrayed behind her. She could feel the weight of countless alien eyes upon them, waiting to see if humanity would follow the same path as every other species. "The ritual is simple," Zenthal continued. "You will kneel before each of the 7 races, acknowledge our superiority, and pledge your species to serve the greater good of galactic civilization. In return, you will be granted protection, technology, and a place in our eternal empire." The silence in the chamber was absolute. Every alien present knew what came next, had seen it performed countless times before. The humans would kneel, as they all had knelt, because resistance was impossible. Johnson looked up at the 7 beings who claimed dominion over the stars and spoke words that had never been heard in this chamber before. "We acknowledge your power," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space. "But we do not accept your authority over us." The reaction was immediate and profound. Gasps echoed from the gallery as thousands of alien observers tried to process what they had just heard. The 7 rulers themselves seemed stunned into momentary silence. The ethereal collective member immediately attempted to probe the human minds, seeking to understand if this was some form of madness or misunderstanding. But human thoughts proved as chaotic and unpredictable as their behavior, resisting telepathic intrusion in ways that no other species had ever managed. The Christic Union began rapid calculations, trying to analyze the logic that could lead any species to refuse the obviously superior power of the Dominion. But human decision-making included variables that their mathematical models couldn't process: principles, emotions, and irrational attachments to abstract concepts like freedom. "Impossible," the Stone Warden rumbled, its voice like an avalanche. "All species kneel. This is the way of the galaxy. Order must be maintained." Dr. Brooks stepped forward to stand beside Johnson. "With respect, that's exactly the problem. You've created a galaxy where everyone thinks and acts the same way. You've eliminated the diversity that makes life interesting and progress possible." The biomancer shifted into a form that resembled a giant predatory bird, its voice a harsh screech. "Diversity leads to chaos. Chaos leads to destruction. We have brought peace to the stars." "You've brought stagnation," General Stone replied, his military bearing evident even in the face of cosmic power. "A galaxy where no one is allowed to be different, to grow, to change. That's not peace. That's death." The Void Swimmer spoke for the first time, its voice like the sound of reality tearing. "You understand nothing of the forces at work here. We have prevented galactic wars, ended suffering, brought order to chaos. Your refusal endangers everything we have built." Johnson looked around the chamber at the thousands of alien faces staring at them in shock and terror. These beings had forgotten what it meant to stand up for themselves, to make their own choices, to risk everything for freedom. "Maybe," she said, "but that's our choice to make. We'd rather face danger as free beings than live safely as slaves." "Hi." Arbiter Zenthal's energy form flared brighter, his anger evident even in his alien physiology. "You know nothing of the galaxy's history. We are the survivors of ages past, the wisdom that emerged from eons of conflict. We offer you the chance to join the greatest civilization in galactic history. By surrendering everything that makes us human," Johnson replied. "We've seen what happens to species that kneel to you. They become copies of each other, thinking the same thoughts, following the same patterns, losing everything that made them unique." The Krillian delegate's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. "Your defiance is noted and catalogued. You will kneel or you will be destroyed. These are the only options available to any species." The human delegation exchanged glances, and something passed between them that the alien observers couldn't understand. It wasn't telepathy or technology, just the simple human ability to communicate through shared experience and mutual trust. "Then, we choose destruction," General Stone said simply. The words hit the chamber like a physical blow. In 10,000 years of galactic history, no species had ever chosen extinction over submission. The concept was so alien to the Dominion's understanding that several of the ruling races began chattering among themselves in languages that hurt human ears to hear. Sergeant Tony Martinez, who had remained silent throughout the ceremony, stepped forward from the honor guard. He was a simple soldier from Earth's unified military, chosen for the delegation not because of his rank or education, but because he represented the common people of Earth. "You want to know what makes humans different?" Martinez asked, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "We don't kneel to anyone. Not to kings, not to gods, not to aliens who think they own the galaxy. We bow our heads to honor the dead and bend our knees to help the fallen, but we don't kneel to show submission to anyone." His words resonated with something the aliens had never encountered before. Absolute conviction born not of logic or fear but of principle. Martinez continued, his voice growing stronger as he spoke. You say you've brought peace to the galaxy, but what kind of peace requires everyone to surrender? Their freedom? 3 weeks before the deadline, Earth buzzed with activity unlike anything in human history. Every shipyard from Luna to Mars worked around the clock, upgrading vessels and building new ones. The smell of welding torches and the sound of hammering echoed across the solar system as humanity prepared for what might be their final stand. General Marcus Stone walked through the underground command bunker beneath Colorado, watching as military units from every nation on Earth trained together. American soldiers worked alongside Chinese engineers, Russian pilots shared tactics with Brazilian Marines, and African technicians upgraded weapon systems designed by European scientists. For the first time in human history, every person on the planet was united behind a single cause. The irony isn't lost on me, Stone remarked to his aide as they observed the training. It took aliens demanding our surrender to finally bring peace to Earth. Dr. Nina Walsh stood in her laboratory, surrounded by pieces of alien technology that Earth had secretly recovered over the decades from crashed ships and abandoned probes. Her team had been reverse engineering these artifacts for years, never knowing when they might need the knowledge. Now that time had come. The power sources are the key, Walsh explained to her assistant as she carefully examined a crystal that pulsed with internal light. Their technology runs on something we've never seen before. It's not nuclear, not chemical, not electrical. It's something that responds to thought patterns. Her breakthrough came when she accidentally touched the crystal while thinking about home. The device immediately began projecting images of Earth from space. More experimentation revealed that alien technology was controlled by mental commands, which explained why their ships seemed to move with impossible grace and precision. Meanwhile, Captain Paul Anderson supervised the construction of humanity's newest and most powerful ship. The UES Defiance was unlike anything Earth had ever built. Where alien vessels were smooth and elegant, the Defiance was angular and brutal. It bristled with weapons, armor plating, and backup systems for the backup systems. Sir, the alien designs we've studied suggest they prefer minimal redundancy, Chief Engineer Ben Clark reported to Anderson. Their ships are efficient and streamlined. If one system fails, the whole vessel becomes vulnerable. Then we build the opposite, Anderson replied, watching workers install the ship's 7th independent power core. Every system has 3 backups. Every weapon has 2 different ammunition types. Every critical component can be manually operated if the computers fail. The Defiance represented human engineering philosophy. If something could go wrong, plan for it, and if planning wasn't enough, build it strong enough to survive anyway. Communications, Officer Sam Turner discovered something interesting while monitoring alien transmissions. The 7 races of the Dominion Council rarely spoke to each other, except for official business. Their communications were formal, cold, and followed precise protocols that had apparently remained unchanged for thousands of years. They don't seem to have what we'd call casual conversation, Turner reported to Admiral Morrison. Everything is structured, predictable, and follows patterns. It's like they've forgotten how to be spontaneous. This observation led to an unusual addition to Earth's battle preparations. Turner began compiling a collection of human music, art, and literature to be broadcast during any confrontation. The idea was that if alien minds were structured and predictable, human creativity might confuse or disorient them. The human delegation preparing to travel to Nexus Prime was carefully selected to represent Earth's diversity and determination. Ambassador Claire Johnson, a former negotiator who had helped end Earth's last major conflict, would lead the diplomatic team. She spent her time studying every piece of information about the 7 Dominion races, looking for weaknesses or cultural blind spots that might be exploited. The Zephyrians see themselves as gods, Johnson explained to her team. The Krillians value military hierarchy above all else. The Ethereals believe emotion is a weakness. Each race has built their entire identity around a single principle. That kind of narrow thinking has to have vulnerabilities. As the deadline approached, humanity received their first direct test, A small fleet of alien ships entered the solar system, led by a massive vessel that looked like a giant insect made of metal and bone. The ship's captain identified himself as Hive General Zakth of the Krillian Empire. Human vessels, you will submit to cleansing protocols before approaching the Sacred Council chambers, the alien commander transmitted. Surrender your weapons and prepare to be boarded for inspection. Captain Anderson, now commanding the completed UES Defiance, responded in a way that shocked the aliens. Negative. We decline your inspection. The simplicity of the human response apparently confused the Krillians, their communications filled with rapid chatter as they tried to understand how any species could simply refuse a direct order from the Dominion. Explain your refusal, Zakth demanded. All species submit to cleansing protocols. This is galactic law. We don't recognize your authority to make laws for us, Anderson replied calmly. What happened next became known as the first human victory, though it barely lasted 10 minutes. The Krillian ships moved to surround the human fleet, clearly intending to force compliance. Anderson gave a simple order that changed everything. All ships, weapons free. Show them what humans do when someone tries to push us around. The battle that followed defied every alien expectation about space combat. The Krillians fought with precise formations and predictable tactics that had served them well for millennia. The humans fought like they were angry, which they were. Chief Weapons Officer Kate Murphy didn't aim for the enemy ship's critical systems like doctrine suggested. Instead, she targeted whatever looked expensive or important. Chief Engineer Clark rerouted power systems in ways that violated every safety protocol Earth had ever written, but somehow made their weapons hit harder and their shields stronger. Most confusing to the aliens was when Communications Officer Turner began broadcasting human music during the battle. The sound of rock and roll filled the communication channels, followed by classical symphonies, jazz, country music, and even children's lullabies. What is the purpose of this audio transmission? Zakth demanded over the comm channel, his voice filled with confusion. It's called music, Turner replied cheerfully while launching another barrage of songs. We thought you might enjoy it. The psychological effect was immediate. The Krillian formations began to waver as their pilots struggled to understand why humans would waste bandwidth on apparently meaningless sound patterns during combat. Their precise targeting became erratic as the unfamiliar rhythms disrupted their concentration. The turning point came when the Defiance rammed straight through a Krillian formation instead of engaging in the elegant dance of long-range combat the aliens expected. Anderson's ship took heavy damage but emerged on the other side, having scattered the enemy fleet and damaged 3 vessels. Impossible, Zakth transmitted, his voice filled with something humans had never heard from an alien before. Uncertainty. No species fights with such chaos. How do you coordinate your vessels without proper formation protocols? We don't, Anderson replied honestly. We just know that when someone threatens our freedom, we hit back as hard as we can. The Krillian fleet withdrew, but not because they had been defeated. They retreated because they couldn't predict what the humans would do next, and that scared them more than any weapon could. Word of the skirmish spread instantly across the galaxy through the Dominion's communication networks. For the first time in recorded galactic history, a species had not only refused to submit to inspection, but had actually forced a Dominion fleet to retreat. The reaction from the 7 ancient races was swift and unprecedented. Emergency Council sessions were called on Nexus Prime as the rulers of the galaxy tried to understand what had just happened. The humans were clearly inferior in technology and numbers, yet they had fought in ways that made no sense and somehow achieved victory. As the human fleet continued toward their destination, they found themselves escorted by observation vessels from all 7 Dominion races. Each species sent their best analysts to study human behavior and try to develop countermeasures for the chaos they represented, but the more they observed, the more confused they became. Human ships played music during routine operations. Their crews told jokes over official communication channels, and their tactical decisions seemed to be based on emotions rather than logic. Admiral Morrison reviewed the intelligence reports as Earth's delegation approached Nexus Prime. The alien observers were asking the same questions over and over. How did humans function without rigid hierarchies? How did they make decisions without following established protocols? How did they fight effectively without predictable strategies? They're trying to understand us the same way they understand everything else, Morrison realized. They think there must be some pattern or rule that explains human behavior. They can't accept that we're genuinely unpredictable. The final approach to Nexus Prime revealed the true scope of what humanity was facing. The galactic capital was a ring-shaped structure the size of a small planet, orbiting an artificial star that provided light and energy to billions of inhabitants. Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the command center of Earth Defense Station Sentinel, staring at the massive screen that showed the incoming message. The alien face looking back at him was unlike anything he had seen before. The creature had scales that shifted from green to purple, eyes that glowed like burning coals, and a mouth full of sharp teeth that clicked when it spoke. "I am Ambassador Vexthul of the Galactic Dominion Council," the alien said in perfect English, though its voice sounded like metal scraping against stone. "Your species has been observed for many cycles. The time has come for you to present yourselves before the Council and accept your place in the Galactic Order." Captain Lisa Harper moved closer to Morrison's side. She had been his tactical advisor for 8 years and had never seen him look so tense. The message continued playing, and the alien's words sent chills down their spines. "You have 30 of your solar cycles to arrive at Nexus Prime. There you will kneel before the 7 ancient races and submit to our rule. This is not a request. This is the way of the galaxy. Every species that has reached the stars has done this. You will do the same." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in complete silence. Morrison turned to Harper and saw his own shock reflected in her eyes. They had always known this day might come. Earth scientists had detected alien signals for decades, but they never imagined first contact would be a demand for surrender. "Get me President Carter on the secure line," Morrison ordered, "and wake up the entire Defense Council. We need everyone here now." Within an hour, the station's main briefing room was filled with Earth's top military and scientific minds. Dr. Alan Brooks, the planet's leading expert on alien life, pulled up holographic displays showing everything they knew about the galaxy, beyond their solar system. "We've been watching them as much as they've been watching us," Brooks explained to the room. "Our deep space telescopes have recorded hundreds of different alien civilizations. But here's the strange part. They all seem to follow the same patterns, same technology, same ship designs, same behavior. It's like they're all copies of each other." General Marcus Stone, a man whose scars told the story of Earth's last great war, leaned forward in his chair. "What do you mean by copies?" "Every advanced civilization we've observed acts exactly the same way. They build the same types of cities, fly the same types of ships. Even their art looks identical. It's as if someone or something has forced them all to become the same." Harper pulled up intelligence reports from their deep space monitoring stations. "We've intercepted communications over the years. The Galactic Dominion Council consists of 7 races that claim to be the oldest in the galaxy. They call themselves the Zephyrians, Krillians, Ethereals, Stone Wardens, Void Swimmers, Christek Union, and Biomancers." President Helen Carter's voice came through the speakers as she joined the meeting from Earth. "Admiral Morrison, what's your assessment of the situation?" Morrison stood and faced the screen showing the president. "Madam President, this isn't a diplomatic contact. This is a threat. They're not asking us to join them as equals. They want us to become their servants." Dr. Brooks activated another display showing alien ship movements near Earth's solar system. "They've been positioning vessels at the edge of our space for months. We thought they were just observing us, but now it's clear they were preparing for this moment." "How many ships are we talking about?" Stone asked. "At least 50 that we can detect, but based on the energy signatures, each one is more advanced than anything we've ever built." The room fell quiet as everyone absorbed this information. Earth's combined fleet consisted of maybe 200 ships, and most of those were designed for exploration or asteroid mining, not warfare. Commander Ryan Davis entered the briefing room with urgency written across his face. He had just returned from a reconnaissance mission to the outer planets, where his ship had been monitoring alien activity. "Sir, I have something you need to see," Davis said to Morrison. He activated a recording that showed a distant star system. This is the Altair system, about 16 light-years from Earth. 3 days ago, we watched what happened to the species that lived there. The recording showed a beautiful blue world surrounded by elegant silver ships. Then larger, darker vessels arrived and everything changed. The planet's cities went dark one by one. The silver ships were destroyed or captured. Within hours, massive mining equipment began stripping resources from the planet's surface. The aliens called it a kneeling ceremony. Davis continued. The Altarians were given the same choice we just received. They chose to kneel, and this was their reward. Their world is now a mining operation, and their people work as slaves. The silence in the room was deafening. Everyone understood what they were really facing. This wasn't about joining galactic civilization. This was about becoming property. President Carter's voice cut through the tension. Admiral Morrison, I need your honest assessment. Can we fight them? Morrison looked around the room at the faces of Earth's best and brightest. These were people who had dedicated their lives to protecting humanity and pushing the boundaries of what was possible. He thought about the billions of people on Earth who had no idea their freedom was about to be challenged. Madam President, they have superior technology and numbers. By every logical measure, we cannot win a direct confrontation. But? Carter asked, sensing there was more. But they're asking us to surrender without even trying to understand who we are. They see us as just another species to be conquered and controlled. They have no idea what humans are capable of when we're fighting for our survival. Harper stepped forward. Madam President, there's something else. Our analysis of their communications shows they're genuinely puzzled by human behavior. They keep referring to us as chaotic and unpredictable. That might be our advantage. Brooks nodded in agreement. Every other species they've encountered apparently followed logical, predictable patterns. We don't. We make decisions based on emotions, instincts, and principles that don't always make sense to outside observers. Stone smiled grimly. In other words, they've never fought anyone crazy enough to fight back. President Carter was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was steady and determined. Admiral Morrison, prepare our fleet. Dr. Brooks, I want everything we know about these 7 races compiled and analyzed. General Stone, begin mobilizing our defenses. Are we going to fight them, Madam President? Morrison asked. We're going. To do something they've never seen before, Carter replied. We're going to show up to their little ceremony, look them in the eye, and tell them exactly what we think of their demands. The meeting ended with everyone understanding their mission. Humanity would not kneel. They would stand, and if necessary, they would fall standing. But they would never surrender their freedom without a fight. As the military leaders dispersed to begin preparations, Morrison remained in the briefing room with Harper. They both stared at the star charts showing the route to Nexus Prime. Do you think we have any chance at all? Harper asked quietly. Morrison smiled for the first time since receiving the alien message. Lisa, humans have been defying impossible odds since we first learned to walk upright. We've survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that should have wiped us out. We didn't come this far just to bow down to anyone. The countdown to humanity's date with destiny had begun.